And tonight, or rather today, or whenever you're listening to this, we're going to do Kate Haggis and the Stone Hunters by Kat Anders, Part 2, Chapter 2, Persuasion. I want you to leave from here, Kate, as much as I appreciate you being the best worker I have ever had. 'Tis time methinks that you should leave, and go here with Master Trelawney, as it's no longer safe for you to be here. And there are some folks as would seriously hunt me down should anything untoward happen to you whilst under my roof, explained Tam, looking up from his stack of silver tariffs he was presently counting, sorting out a pile of tarans as well as gold tariffs and tarans into the bargain. But, I began to protest, this was not what I thought I was going to get jumped for, and certainly not the kind of speech I'd expected at all. What was with it? People always wanting to get rid of me. But nothing, lass, interjected the healer as quick as a flash. You are needed elsewhere right now, and as for the danger which has become apparent, for there are stone hunters out in force again. He paused momentarily to sip his presumably hot tea, before adding more firm and grimly than ever. Besides, Leafledore has need of you to break the spell that's upon him, and we have no time to lose. That lady! And with this he almost spat the word with such distaste it shocked me, and her witch-like ways will be there probably afore we arrive back. So our work is cut out for us, if you catch my drift, lass. I guess I'm basically asking for you to help. I know you have some love for Leafy. But Robert, I declared, hot and flustered, minding a whirl of who he was really talking about that had posed this so-called danger. I do not understand. What are you and Tam on about, when you say the hunters and trouble is brewing? Is there something you're not telling me that I should be aware of? This lady that is supposedly coming to Court Leafordor on behalf of Sagrasson's command is nothing compared to this other threat, if all that both of you say is true. So tell me what the hell is your real reason for coming all the way down here just to get me? Not just to knock some sense into the Lord of the Dodinnan, surely. For that I do not believe one iota. I had now leaned over the table, raising my voice several loud decibels, my brogue thickening as I spoke, loud enough that a couple of the scrubbing girls had even turned their heads from their own idle chatter to see what was going on. Murray, my lad, casually asked the man in greens, ever so politely, would you mind fetching my healer bag from upstairs, please? Oh, I knew this ploy. He was excusing the ranger so he did not hear what was about to be said next. I'd seen this kind of trick before. Marshy, being who he was, did not seem to suspect a thing, and nodded with that gay smile as he trotted off up the stairs, before Robert suddenly turned to me and said in a low, hushed whisper of the conspirator, You listen to me, lass. You're not safe here. I've reason to believe that the hunters are a group of ancients who will undoubtedly take you out amongst the first. There's some seriously dark magic going on, and I intend to get to the bottom of it. You'd be far safer to travel with us and stay by my side. Well, at least until we can sort out why it is these hunters have turned up again. What the hell would hunters want with me? I asked incredulously. Somehow I felt insulted. Listen careful, girlie. Last time the hunters came, it was before the Battle of Arenya and the fall of snow fell, Kate, explained Tam in the same dulcet, coarse way as the healer. And then they disappeared. Hunters turn up every time there's about to be a large death count. They will stop at nothing to take out certain folk first, especially if they believe they are instrumental or can put a halt to whatever it is they're up to. You may not believe this, but the hunters despise those who carry an interest, or indeed hold one of the infamous elfstones, just like you do on your person, girl. Tam sighed heavily and stroked his matted beard afore stating more firmly, I've already taken the liberty to packing up your stuff and giving a mare to you that is saddled and ready for you to go. You'd be far safer if you went with Trelawney. He's dealt with these hunters many a time and survived. Despite all of this, you have to trust me on this, girl, because one of the hunters has already paid a rather unhealthy interest in your person, as is, and made too many inquiries even for my liking. You what? Who has been asking all these questions? Who's this hunter you're talking about? I'll cut the bugger in half. Neither of you are making any sense whatsoever to me. Who or what are these hunters? I demand to know immediately if you wish my cooperation. I snapped back rather impatiently, because this was conversation that felt very one-sided. Angelus Diath, said Tam flatly. He's a hunter, though his job's not so much as to destroy a holder of one of the stones, but more the purpose to convert them to the side of the hunters. Trust me when I say he once too held of a stone, but he was corrupted and thus condemned to live in the realm of the living and the dead, to forever hunt out others who use the stones or hold possession of them, and take them out by whatever means necessary. You cannot trust Angelus Diath. He came from another world, of this much is true, and he's probably more deadly than any foe you'll ever have the chance to come up against. It's for your own safety and protection that I'm insisting on sending you forth with old Trelawney here. And for that the matter is closed. I'll hear no more protest from your lips, woman. You'll go with Master Trelawney and young Master Kellendy, and no more excuses. Like I said, your bags have already been packed and plans made. This is bloody bullshit. Are you talking about that damnable Elstones? I rose up swiftly from the table in anger more than anything else. Angelus Diath is not as dangerous nor as deadly as you make him out to be. Elsewise he would not have saved me last night. And as for the so-called other hunters, I say bring it on. I can fight with the best of them, and I will not have my life dictated for me by superstitious old farts who cannot even run their own lives properly. I've never heard of anything so absurd. What if I give back my stone? Give it back, then I'm under no threat. That makes sense to me. And with that last snarling breath, I pulled free my hunting knife blade that was tucked into my belt and slammed the item in question down into the corner of the table. Tam glanced at the blade and its hilt, where the L stone glittered eerily. The landlord's face was full with worry, just as Robert's did, with even more fear written on his. Oh, it cannot be taken back, Kate. It was given to you for a purpose, lassie, quailed the healer strangely, as he pushed it back in my direction and urged, just please take it back, quickly. Frowning with much haughty prissy attitude, I snatched it back up and slipped it back into the sheath that I used to carry it on my belt with, along with the comment of, none of this is making any sense at all. As for me accompanying you guys back to Leaford's place of dwelling, I think I'm no safer there than I am here. He may well be a mage, but if the hunters are as insistent, then... Before anything else was said or uttered in annoyance, Morrissey was suddenly behind me and startled me. He thrust out an arm holding the healer's satchel towards Rob, stating, Here you go, mate. I also took liberty to bring Kate's stuff down from her room too. Just as well as not much of it. Her white satchel alone's getting pretty heavy as is. He beamed his brightest at me as I half-cocked my head towards him, spotting that he was carrying 2 small knapsacks and my white tattered satchel, before adding, It'll be great to be travelling with you again, Kate. You can just put my stuff down where you got it from, Molly, because I'm not going, came my rough, cold retort, as I fiercely held him in my own narrowed gaze. Yes, you are, lassie, even if I have to hog-tie you down to a damn horse, snapped Robert, who was by now obviously in no further mood to play these silly games of parley. Make me! I cried out, rather suddenly defiant. I turned to storm away from the table and its small company, when Morrissey wrapped his long, strong arms about me, halting me mid-track, hoisting me up and over onto his shoulder as if I weighed no more than a hefty sack of potatoes. Put me down this instant! I screamed, flailing and kicking at him. Well, Rob, you owe me some money, mate. I told you she wouldn't come quietly, not quietly at all. At least she's a lot more ruddy lighter than my Joanne, he laughed heartily and headed out towards the door, with the healer fast trailing behind him, after picking up the rest of the gear. Still, I was screaming in protest loudly as we crossed towards the horses, where the horses were stabled. You put me down now, Molly, or so God help you, I'll cut your nuts off! My struggling was to no avail. He merely grinned. There was a sudden blow to the back of my head. I did not even see it coming. A falling sensation, then wham! I hit the hard clay ground with a heavy thud. I think she's coming too, came that soft, dulcet, concerned whispers of Morrissey nearby. A cool cloth had been laid on my forehead gently. My head itself was thumping so loudly it was not certain whether it was going to explode or implode. Either way, it hurt, and as I tried to move it, nausea swept a tidal wave through my system that caused me to obediently stay put. This was no fun. Hey, Kate, how are you feeling? Came the soothing tones of the ranger gently towards me. I opened up my eyes to see I was actually laying flat on my back in some form of woodland clearing. My head still swimming, my thoughts incoherent and distant. The usual inner voice pulsed with a throbbing into a severe submission of silence. I blinked once, then twice. Stars were up above, and it was almost a twilight dark. I could not help but wonder how long I'd been out for the count. The smell of wood being burnt crisped the chill night air and assaulted my senses. The pale orange and yellow glimmering, flickering light that cast eerie shadows which danced up in the leaves of the trees which surrounded the tiny hollow. I lay there for a moment, miserable and despondent, to say the least, chasing and fighting against the pain in my head, the beating of the pulse in my veins, and the ever-large threat of puking at any moment. Eventually I managed the words of, "What the hell happened to me?" "We were attacked," came the flat stoic words of the healer somewhere nearby, though not within my visibility range, as Morrissey tried to help me sit up a little and sip something awful from a tiny vial he was holding. "But we were lucky. Old Tam came out and helped us get away," grinned the ranger happily, in his usual mannerism of optimism. "Hunters?" I inquired a little, as the strong, acidic, lemon-flavored bitter cordial edged down my throat and began to ease the bursting stars of pain in my noggin. Even the nausea began to ease off a little, till I managed to sit up wholly. I rubbed my head a little to try and speed up the process. "No, not hunters," replied the man in green stoically. "A hunter, to be precise." I hung my head at these words, having this sinking feeling that I knew exactly which hunter it had been. Probably Angela Ass, knowing my luck. After all, that had been said previously in the bar-room. "So we are now north of Irashi and well on our way to Leafholder's homelands. Should be an interesting journey, if nothing else. It would seem the hunter already knows where we're headed to, though. But not to worry, there are ways of distracting and disrupting the plans of a hunter and finding its intended victim of prey. Plots and ploys. Plots and ploys to play with. As the stage, it seems, is already set," added the healer gravely, with a distant melancholy to his voice, echoing quietly in the glade. I could now distinctly hear the sound of a blade being sharpened on a whetstone. I turned, and in the half-shadows I could now make out the man in greens, sitting quietly on a nearby old dead tree stump, sliding down the whetstone on his sword edge. It glinted and gleamed eerily in the firelight, as though already caked with the blood of another. His face seemed somewhat aged, since we had spoken so rudely to one another in the tavern. So tell me, Kate, are you going to give us any more problems, or be so kind as to ride the rest of the way with us, quietly and well behaved?" asked the ranger in his usual happy-go-lucky way, as he smiled and now offered me some watery-looking stew and some bread. "Like I have any choice," came my despondent reply, as I grumpily took the bread and nibbled on it thoughtfully. My inner voice of reason was having a conversation with the voice of reason inside my head already. Great! More sanity loss issues. Yay! "So, Angelus the Earth was an ancient. But an ancient what?" "An ancient who hunts out those with Elstones," chimed the voice of reason. "Yes, I understand that part, Miss Know-it-all, but why? How'd he come by his Elstone originally, I wonder? And like the attackers just happened to be damn hunters. Yeah, right. Like that's not a coincidence," came the waspish tones of the sarcastic inner self. To which my voice of reason piped up in the growl of, "How the hell should I know? I'm just the voice of solid reason, not some bloody computer." My inner voice didn't like that answer much, and continued to pursue the subject with the words of, "Does he still possess of it, maybe? You know, the stone that they talked about. If he has been converted to becoming a hunter, then surely he could be converted back from the realm of the condemned." Deep down inside the turmoil, that question made as much sense as it added confusion to the conversation going on in my head. Yet there had to be a way. I just knew it. It could not have been all bad. What about that moment by the well? Or the time he saved me in the tavern from being sliced in half? I frowned despite the dull, aching thud going on inside my mind and still thought hard about the lead-up of events. I was now sitting with no support at all, rubbing my aching neck, which felt strangely bruised and cricked in the most awkward way. I tried to crack it, but to no success. "Achy are we, lass? Here, maybe you should try some of this, then." He passed a cup over that smelt bitter. Very nasty odour, reminding me of stinky, weak-old cat's piss. Ew! I wrinkled my nose at it in disgust. Insulted, offended that he should be even offering it to me. "Go ahead, lass, it'll put hairs on your chest, that will, and make you feel a lot better, so we can get going sooner rather than later," he coerced with a lopsided grin to his features, as he watched me take it rather reluctantly. I gulped it down with my tongue placed reverently on the outside of the cup so I could not taste it half as much, but it still left that bilious aftertaste to the back of my throat. A taste so vile that served to make me want to gag even further. Ugh. Just as Marshy was snickering to Robert's comment of hair on my chest, I could hear him giggling and muttering, "I don't think Leafy would appreciate seeing hairs growing on her smooth mounds," followed by more laughter, which he placed a hand over his mouth to try and stifle, unsuccessfully hiding it from me. I elbowed him hard in the ribs. He made a strange winded sound and backed away instantaneously, giving me his infamous hurt, blue-eyed puppy dog look, the one usually reserved for Joanne when she was chastising him for something or another. But it seemed that the healer was true to his words, for less than half an hour or so later. No, I did not have hair springing forth on my chest, but I was standing and feeling so much better, as if I'd drunk 14 espresso coffees and was raring to go. We packed up that small encampment, because now it was very dark indeed. Resaddled the horses and checked the equipment, then mounted. I was in the middle between the healer and Morrissey at the back. I was still wearing the garments I'd been wearing whilst working at the old tavern that Tam owned. A little miffed, disconcerted at the fact that I'd been stuck to travelling with the two L's, and still feeling like I was in the dark with this whole episode of the so-called hunters. No one had said outright who it was that had attacked us, but still in my mind skimmed through the details as we rode in silence. What exactly had happened back there, I was unsure, but sooner or later they'd have to tell me, or they would let slip. One way or another, I'd find out the truth to the matter. We rode uphill for a bit, through the dark, shadowy woods that creaked ominously in the still, cool springtime night. The stars blinked unceasingly in a merciless, cold, watchful deliberation as we moved through the nightscape of the silent world. Yet still my heart pounded against my rib cage like a cornered animal, adrenaline pumping through my veins as the laboured breath of each inhalation I held was caught in the icy cold air which was the tail end of winter and early spring combined. Stars up above, cold in the reflective light as they stared down, watching over the three of us travelling in silence. Here I was riding a fairly fine to-do mare, so far away from everything and anything I'd been taught. The world, my original job, my old life. My life, and everything it had possibly encompassed, seeming a far cry of some painfully lonely, distant, rumbling memory of servitude. The pain, the anguish of mental torture endured over years of being in love, but it obviously been unrequited, was more than enough to send me to my own personal hell of solace. What had compounded this matter further was the arrival of Robert and Morrissey, goading me into coming back because of this lady whose name I could not even recall had not helped. My defiant nature was at the present point of exploding on everyone. I certainly felt no pity, no remorse at knowing that Leaford had agreed to meet with her. As for the absurdity of him dating her, well, to that issue I was severely pissed off. I wondered how he could do that when he felt of nothing for her. Unless he had felt nothing for me in reality, and all that I had perceived as his tenderness towards me was more of pity than anything else. At the end of the day, this is what it all boiled down to. I was still mad at Leofridor for never taking me on as his own, for failing to keep his promises to me, and I had inadvertently fallen for Angelus because of his warm, intriguing nature. Or at least, perhaps the word fallen was not quite the way to describe it. Maybe the term of infatuated by something he had that he was freely offering to me. This thought in itself was disturbing, and it scared me to think that my own self could be so desperate to be wanting to have a chance at that which no one else would give to me. I sighed quite a few times, more than was my usual quota, while we rode in silence. Only the jingling of the horses' bridles could have heard, and the clipping of their hooves. Finally, as the dawn was rising, a pale azure blue and coppery colour over the far eastern horizon through the litter of leaves that blossomed here on the thick-trunked sentinel trees, where the road wound around at a very meandering pace. Finally, as we paused, halting briefly on a sharp bend, only to see a large contingency of nobles in hunting garb riding along. After having spent 2 weeks on the road with no sign of others, this was rather a pleasant change to the otherwise boring landscape and companionship. "Oh, that's bloody marvellous, that is," declared the man in green in a huff. "Seems we have hit a hunting party out in the road, folks, so I guess we stay off to the side here a bit till they pass us by, because surely we will not be allowed to pass without Kate regaling some stupid tale." "Why, Rob?" asked the ranger kindly, as he smiled brightly, his orbs focused down the road to where the hunting party were riding along at a mild trot. "Because otherwise we may get into some serious trouble. I'm chanced that 10 to 1 those are of Sagerson's court and that lady's court, not of your friends," he replied surlily. "And since when have we cared who sees us travel and who has anything to say? Besides, I work for no one, and no one tells me where I can or cannot go. Nor will they demand of entertainment," I mocked before spurring my horse into a canter, passing the man in greens with an ease as he reached out in protest with a quick, "Kate, no! Ah, crap, there she goes again." Only he was a little fraction of a second too late as I cantered past him and out into the main road, heading for the main hunting party. Hair streaming behind me in wavers of golden brown and reddish chestnut brown, soft curls down to my waist, eyes glinting in the gaining sunlight. Robert and Morrissey did not take long to catch me up, but by that time we had already been spotted by the party of about a dozen or so nobles in their fancy falcons and dress, all looking haughty, snooty. You get the picture. To hell with them. "Hail!" I shouted friendly enough towards them. "Would you mind moving so we can pass and share the road and get past y'all? My friends and I are kind of in a hurry." There was a mocking laugh from the group ahead of us. I was apparently being ignored. Nothing new there. But it was still very highly annoying treatment. They did not own this road. "Kate!" hissed Robert rather furiously. "You cannot go ordering the High Court members out of your way. You're not a queen, you know. Now, just let it go, lass." "I know that, Rob, but neither can they be so rude as to hog the whole of the darn road. We have just as much right in passage here as they do on their silly little hunting trip," I responded, while still holding a smile to my face and watching the company up ahead. We slowed down the pace a little. Now the horses were merely walking. A couple of the riders ahead of us were heavily armoured, and I had already gauged their positions, weapons and all, observing them exceptionally carefully. "Commoner, perhaps you forget of your place," came the sneering tones of a rather angular, pinched-faced male individual, who turned to his fellows with a smirk on his features that made me want to wipe it clean for him, as he continued with the words, "It is you who should make way for us." Snorted Marshy. "Kate Haggis make way for the likes of that feathered upstart? I think not," he chuckled quietly to himself. Oh, he was loving this, actively waiting my next response or decision. He was poised by my side, avidly awaiting any form of signal. "My dear sir," I laughed merrily, which had the effect of making the individual frown with sudden uncertainty, "if you do not move yourself, to at least prove that courtesy still exists within those whose purses and bellies are fattened by the mere commoner's hard work, then I shall endeavour to prove unto you that you need to learn equality and humility in all things, all of which often start with the most humble of subjects. For indeed it sounds to me as though your bottom has not been wetted by a good whipping in a long age. Perhaps your mother gave up on trying to train your pussy willow-footed magnitude to have some fun whilst her time still allowed. After all, if I'd been her, I probably would have beaten or at least attempted to beat some manners into you before now. Nay, I jest not, sir. Mark my words, I shall flatten that fatted backside of yours till you can no longer be able to ride a palfrey, if you hesitate any further to not allow mine companions and I passage. I smiled with this congenial threat. I already had my sword hilt in one hand, my dagger in the other, and he was now more than unsure of himself. He snorted at me and shouted, "You dare to threaten me, Firiel? You think you dare to bring sword arm unto I, and win? I, Lord Eldrinus Abernathy of Tolstar? How dare you, indeed? If it was not for the mere fact you are a lass of the female of the species, I would gladly give you the whipping you so belligerently threaten me with, teaching you the manners you so deserve, wench." Again I laughed, and this time Robert was holding back a snicker or two of his own, just as Morrissey chuckled loudly at this lord's response. "Ha! You only wish to refuse the offer because you know that it would be justly offered, and you would be beat, undoubtedly, into submission, even if I use not a weapon unto your hindquarters, you overstuffed, over-righteous, arrogant git." I mocked him even further, the glory of watching his face blanching at first, then going that lovely burgundy red shade of fury. A nearby soldier type muttered something to this Abernathy person, yet he waved his hand at him in annoyance, stating loudly, "Then, Firiel, have of it your own way." He dismounted with agility akin to a tiger stalking and catching its prey. I leapt off my own mare, with little to no grace at all, pulling free my sword and dagger. I handed the items reverentially to Morrissey and announced in clear tones, "Watch these for a moment for me, please, Morley. I don't wish to sully and dirty their goodness with the likes of this blackguard's tongue, or soil them with his touch. Takes a lot of cleaning." At which point I noticed Robert was almost roaring with laughter in silence, bemusedly watching me roll my sleeves up at my arms and pulling off my skirt to reveal my soft, pale green hose I often wore just in case. You may wish to hold this too," I said, and handed Kelndy my skirt mantle, then stared hard at the young-looking elven nobleman before me. "Ah, an opponent," snickered my inner voice viciously. The noble was similarly disarming himself. He had already pulled off his sword and belt, his 2 hunting daggers, his bone quiver, along with his gauntlets and vestment of chain mail. He glared hard at me. I smiled politely back in turn, half tempted to ask if he was sure he could beat me without a weapon. "Before I teach you a lesson overdue in humility, Firiel, I beg your name of my about-to-be-fallen cocky foe," he bragged loudly, much to the snickering and stifled giggles of his party, who were watching avidly, obviously as confident as this asshole was of beating me. "I will not give you my name lest you best me in a fair fight," I grinned. He was going to be relatively easy to put down on the ground, or at least I hoped he would be. I was feeling so full of angst right then, it would not have been hard for me to beat the living daylights out of him, just as I had with the mage on more than one occasion. But my plan was simple: kick him down quickly. "Oh, this should be good," whispered Morrissey to the healer. "I'll bet you 10 silver towers that she comes out, literally on top." And with that he giggled, his bright sky-blue eyes twinkling with a mischievous sparkle. "Oh, you're on," said the man in greens, and he leaned over the horses to shake his hands on it with the ranger, then sat back, his arms casually folded over his legs, still holding his reins. He smiled, but amused, but knew what game I had been playing it. For starters, I'd upset the stupid fop of a lord, and that never served any well to fight in a fit of temper. I stood my ground, eye contact not hesitating or moving from my opponent, as he muttered about how insolent a dog I was, and then he approached. He swung for me first, and cleverly I dodged before sweeping out my opposing leg in a side kick. It was fast and high-aimed, smacking into him and sending him stumbling backwards a bit. He came at me again. This time I was even more prepared than before, and pulled a maneuver I had not used since my childhood. I grabbed his collar as he came bounding towards me, stuck my foot into his chest as my teeth clenched in preparation. Pulling him with me, I used my whole weight to roll backwards in a judo roll, sticking my foot up and straight at the momentum caused him to fly up and backwards, past my head and landing with a very hard, heavy thud on his back, knocking the wind out of him entirely. Before he had a chance to recover, I had quickly sprung to my feet, nimbly for one of my size, age, and weight. I slammed my whole body down onto his chest, crushing the air out of him before, on automated response, One of my hands clasped at his throat tightly. "Now, I believe you insulted me. First of all, let me assure you that I am no Feriel, nor am I related to any dog or similar canine species." There was a sound of swords being drawn from their sheaths. Then I heard the commanding words of Robert as he began clearly speaking. "Oh, I would not even dare that if I were you, lads, because our lady there may just throttle your lord, and you'll have drawn your weapons for naught." "Who are you?" he hissed in a stammer between gasps for breath. "I am Lady Kate Haggis, sir, and I certainly do not take too kindly to those who try to stop my fellows and I from going where we have need to be. Now be a good fellow and tell your lovely hunting companions back there to put their weapons away. Share the road nicely, and let us pass, or else I will make sure your pretty little face is a sight that not even the blind would appreciate the revealing in the telling of." I raised my free hand, balled into a fist at right angles, ready to punch him on the nose if it had been necessary, releasing the grip a few moments from his throat so he could gag out the orders. Releasing him, I backed away cautiously, not once taking my eyes off him, as I walked with my slightly hobbling gait back towards my horse. Marshy threw my skirt mantle towards me. I gratefully slipped it back on, feet first, and tied it about my waist in satisfaction, before swinging myself back up into the saddle once more. The hunting party made a large gap for us to pass, and we rode off without a single look back on that lord who had been laid on the floor by a mere simple judo manoeuvre. He was stunned and studiously staring at me with the flames of ire in his eyes. "Cool, that was pretty cool. What's that move called then, Kate?" asked Marshy cheerfully. I think it's called an uchimata from what I remember. It's a fighting technique from Japan called judo, and I learned it whilst I was very young. Comes in handy every now and again, though I must admit my back's hurting somewhat now." I grinned back at him. All three of us were laughing now as we jolted onwards through the now open countryside, the glow of sunshine and the clear sky evident of another beautiful day starting. As we rode, Robert commented quietly in jovial tones, "Damn, Kate, it's bloody well good to have you back to your old form of fierce, no-nonsense self, lass, of that I'm certain." "Ah, it felt good too, Rob, let me tell you," I chuckled. "Oh, and I bet my left arm will be less willing to insult a traveller ever again, am I right, Rob?" cackled Marshy, his orbs still sparkling madly with mirth. "Oh, I'm sure, laddie, I'm sure," he replied before spurring his own horse and taking the lead once again, this time galloping through the long meadow, where the flowers were already opening in full bloom of the future of summer's promise, far away from that bleakness that had previously been viewed as the future. 2 weeks, 4 days, several hours later, we arrived, with no further ado or adventure to report other than the incident from the hunting party. The large gates of the Dordinnan compound glistened white in an eerie glow of moonlight. It was night time. 1,000 candles glittered and flickered, their beckoning golden warm light in the hollows of the window frames and lattices of the gardens as we entered. Weary, travel-worn, and silent in our thoughts, each of us holding our own form of dread to the situation. There was quite a party going on, it would seem, when we arrived. A festivity of dancing and feasting was being held in the main hall, which all three of us decided would be best if we avoided for the present moment in time. Well, at least until we'd each had a chance to clean ourselves up. I made my way, as secretively as I could, towards the old chambers, and was surprised to find that all my stuff had been taken out. Glumly I wandered, all put out and feeling more lost than ever before, until I came onto Joanna Marshy's room and knocked. Joanna answered the door. She was dressed in fine linens of silk-edged crimson gown that rustled in pale golden fabric, which shimmered as she moved. She ushered me in with a kind smile and the words of, "Oh, Kate, I'm so sorry, but stupid old Leoford was going to throw all your stuff out, whilst Maury and Robert were looking for you, so I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of rescuing it all. Here, I have all your gowns, here, including that beautiful number from Prince Nathan gave you. Let us get you all cleaned up, Han, and then you can get dressed for the festivities. You missed it. The lady arrived this evening, about 2 hours before you and the guys did." "Thanks, Joanne," I mumbled, rather downed by the whole experience. "I was just wondering if all my stuff has been taken out of the chambers I used to share with Leafy. Then where am I going to sleep tonight? I guess he must have really hated and resented me for leaving the first time around." "In my old cot, if you like," came the familiar tones of the healer as he strode across the room to hug me. He was dressed in the finest spring greens I had ever seen adorning him. Marshy, too, was dressed in his finest array and looking more vibrantly handsome than usual. Even his son Colwyn, who was cradled in his arms, was dressed in finest white linen and pale blue robes and cap, with tiny pale blue booties that had little white lace to match. My heart pined, but I placed my stoic face on, as Joanne led me to the bathroom, where hot scented water had already been readied for my arrival. Hung in here was the infamous dress I had worn the night I had danced, then sat for hours conversing in the arms of Nathan. The material I could not identify, but it shimmered still and with an opalescence, and was the colour of pearly opals and creams intermingled, with a soft silvery brocade of silver adorning the edges in the shape of butterflies and dragonflies. I lifted it up. The garment was a full-length dress, blouse, skirts all in one, its bodice front laced around the middle, delicately with the same silver brocade of lace. Also within the same area, on the nearby shelving that served this room to usually house such things as towels and the likes, was a pair of matching dance slippers of similar ilk, along with the original silver necklace with a large round white moonstone set in it, that glinted as if it was winking at me in fond memory. I sighed heavily, feeling the tears well up in my orbs before unexpectedly turning around and hugging Joanne tightly in thanks to it all. She gave me a warm, kindly smile and left, closing the door quietly behind her. But I was grimy from travel, and as I glanced at myself in the long, feature-length mirror that hung behind the door, I frowned. The clothes I was currently wearing had the appearance of baggy, draped, lifeless skin, badly covering a rather hollow, empty cause of a skeleton. Despite the fact I was fat, had been since I could remember, my weight had obviously dropped some since I had left. Either that or my clothes had become overstretched, maybe. Yet the rolls that defined where my hip line somehow merged into my thighs and waistline were still obvious to see. A brief appraisal of my sorry-ridden image was more than enough to disgust me into wondering how I could ever possibly compete with this lady, who was probably more beautiful and elegant than I could ever be. Breeding and standing held a key to a lot of this, but I did not wish to pretend just to catch Leaford's eye. I was coated in grey and brown dirt, all over my simple tunic and gown. Sweat-beaded, marked, earthy tracks all over my muddied face and arms, cloaking my true being to the verge of insanity, a mere hollow shell of my former woman I had once recognized in myself. I revealed to be more like a desperate wild animal than a female of standing. A lost and forlorn child running rampant in the wet, muddy clay hills of Wales could not have looked more bedraggled than my form did right at that moment in the mirror of the Kelmley couple's bathroom. I wanted to cry. Taking another deep breath, I suddenly realized that I just did not feel comfortable standing there staring at my horrid form. I was contemplating bottling out of the whole making an appearance thing when Robert knocked loudly on the door, stating clearly, "Come on, lassie, we've not got all night. I cannot hear water slopping in there. Do I have to come in there and wash you myself and get you ready?" No, came my quick retort. Just give me a minute. Be ready soon, I promise. All right then, but just bear it in mind some folks are waiting here and we're all hungry, lass, he reprimanded kindly, and I heard him shuffle away from the door. I was apprehensive about this whole business affair of turning up uninvited to the festivities down below in the main hall, especially since I'd been thrown out of my old room and had nowhere on offer to sleep save the old healer's own cot. Suddenly my wilful inner voice took charge, just as my hands began to meticulously work of their own accord. "Got to get these nasty clothes off, Kate, before Rob carries out his threat to come in here and dunk you personally. Huh, how embarrassing would that be, huh? Now buckle up and get yourself ready for the ball, like the good little miscreant Cinderella that you are." I stripped myself down, cloak, dress, skirt, kirtle, mantle, then blouse and the underwear, which I am sad to report had been worn intermittently between washing them in Coldstreams on and off for the last 2, almost 3 weeks. Even my favourite green hose that I so often wore as trousers hit the floor. Finally I pulled off my vestment that I had been wearing under the blouse, and frowned one last time in the mirror at the complex discomfiture my own body image suffered to afford me. The dirt, the grime, the whole unruly appearance, even more evident than ever before. taking my socks and shoes off last, the smell of which almost bowled me over with a pungent odour, my own face scrunching up as I suppressed a massive nauseous heave of protest from my stomach and kicked the offending garments aside. Carefully stepping into the water, which was now not as hot as had been originally planned, but still soothing to the skin, picking up the small bundle of washcloth and the bar of soap that had been thoughtfully laid out for me, rubbing the two together till a satisfactory lather ensued. Then slowly in circular motions I rubbed and scrubbed every last inch of my obnoxious body clean. Starting with neck, back, shoulders, neck, face first, whatever. Then came my arms and chest, carefully making sure I covered every piece of naked flesh with the soapy suds that gathered in trails. Then lifted the smaller jug of fresh water as I stood there and letting it pour in small trickle down my nakedness in a daze of shimmering steam and fragrance. The grime slipped away into the water, the scum mixing with its warm scented oils and making it grey, turning my skin paler than it had ever been. A light glow rendered my arms and the rest of my exposed self. Then I stepped out of the bathtub and walked casually to wrap a clean towel about my form to hide it, heading towards the other bowl of fresh water laid out, and began to wash my hair. Tangled and messy as it was, the dirt from this particular act was even worse than washing the whole of my body, but nonetheless I completed the task without second thought. Quickly, quietly, methodically placing sweet oils of blue violets and amber, scented oils into the now even more unruly curls, and coiled it up in a smaller towel. Then I slipped into the dress shoes, as well as the fresh underlinen that had been brought for me from my original belongings, placed the necklace about my throat, and stepped out of the bathroom, causing several of my friends to giggle or laugh quietly. What? Am I wearing this back to front or something? I asked, puzzled, indicating my dress. Nay, lass, but you cannot possibly go with your hair still up in a towel, surely to goodness, mused the healer in explanation, as he crossed the room and began to unwrap the tresses that hung down way past my shoulders, in long rivulets of dark golden brown and chestnut red curls. It is unmanageable, Rob, I muttered apologetically. Nothing that I cannot fix for you, Han, smiled Joanne almost sickeningly at me as she steered me to a footstool that sat before her dresser mirror. Maury, love, can you put young Colwyn down for a few and help me with a moment here, please? He nodded without question, handing his son to Robert, who frowned at the child. Then he came over and did whatever Joanne asked him. A few minutes later, my locks had been transformed to a mass of something else. My hair, half clipped up behind my ears, yet tentatively as well as very ingeniously laid down in long, softer locks that glistened and appeared to sit still naturally against my head. Small little flower-shaped beads had been strung on a few strands. It was strangely perfect, and I felt like a princess. I smiled, but my eyes showed how empty I still felt inside. Then Joanne pulled out something I did not even know the woman possessed. Makeup. Before I knew it, she had transformed me even further. Gone was the dark circles around my eyes, the lashes, which normally were not seen due to the fact they were so fair and short, had come to life, long and thick. A little pale eyeliner of silver grey and some silver eyeshadow bring the green grassy coloration of my orbs to their fullest shining glory. My lips were barely touched with a blush lip gloss, and my cheekbones highlighted so delicately without making it obvious that I was to what I was wearing. I was astounded. She wiggled her eyebrows at me and smiled, stating, "We all have our little talents, Kate. This is mine when I was living in our birth world. I was a beautician by trade." And then she grinned, because I was stunning, a completely different person, staring wide-eyed at wonder at myself in the small mirror. "Thanks, Joanne, really. Thank you," I declared, genuinely grateful. "Well, the ball awaits for no one, so shall we get going then, people?" inquired the man in green, passing Colwyn back to Maury's arms, making Joanne take her husband's free one, just as Robert opened up the door for them all. He waited till they had exited, before allowing me to pass, placing a hand at the small of my back with the words of, "Leafledore be a fool not to see the true beauty that you possess. You positively glow, lass. I cannot wait to see that idiot's stunned face. Now, all I'll be asking of you is to gain his attention. Just distract him from that lady of Tolstar, nothing more, mind." "Got it. Not a problem, Robert. Leave it to me," I muttered nervously. Strange that I could be so nervous about dancing with someone and plying my wares as a woman, when beating up a total punk-headed, arrogant idiot held no nerves or thinking to it at all. We stopped halfway so that the nursemaid could take little Colwyn to somewhere else, away from the loud noise of the music and party. Then we entered the large hall. Unannounced and unprepared, Morrissey took off with Joanne, instantly gracing the dance floor. Robert sped past me, hailing some old friends, as he moved, leaving me standing at the edge of the large, expanded room, unabashed and on my own, terrified. I took some humble steps forward into the expanse of the crowd, in the midst of which there was elegantly swirling figures twirling around in a regal frenzy of rainbow colours and laughing as the music played loudly by the live minstrels in the far balcony. Leafordor was currently sat on his dais, looking thoughtful, his cousin close by his side. Huh, Leafordor. Leafordor Dinnan. I'd not seen him in some time, and he certainly did not appear to be his usual animated self, which was normal for such functions. And then there she was. A tall, slender, flat chest, flat body with no definition whatsoever. Long, straight, ebony-coloured hair that resembled a raven's sleek feathers, the length of which graced below her shoulders in perfected straight line. Her brow wreathed with pale apple blossoms twined with ivy through her hair. Her perfect red-formed lips, her dark eyes piercing and bright, all in one. Her pale snow-white skin, that was as perfect as her well-bred poise. I had no chance against such a beauty. Such a fantastically formed and made member of the female genre. In that moment I felt two emotions as my face and veins flushed red. Pain. My heart felt crushed. Then there was jealousy, like I had never before felt. It ground its way up from the inner core of my being and pronounced that she would never win his heart. Never have him, for if I could not, then she certainly would not. Ever. No one as yet had noticed my entrance, thankfully. I turned swiftly as if to leave. Stuff this for a game of soldiers. I had no intention of competing in a game where I knew I would just lose. After all, if he was going to be happy with her, who was I to be the one to interfere with the matter? But before I could proceed to make a graceful exit, back the way I had come, a rather familiar face appeared before me. Stunned, I glanced up to see the same fop I had beaten into submission a couple of weeks or so previously on the road. Lady, I do not believe we have been formally introduced, he began in his haughty nasal tones, as he bowed sweepingly towards me with that snide smile of politeness. My name is Lord Algernon Abernathy of Tolstar, brother to the beautiful Lady Meglin Abernathy of Tolstar. And you would be, ma'am? I believe you do know of I, sir, for my name is one that surely has burned itself into your memory, lest it be rather shorter than I first assumed. For I am Lady Kate Haggis. I gave him a wan smile and a subtle curtsy. I was trying to keep the nervous edge from my voice. I failed. Now who was the one stunned? He glanced at me from head to toe, absolutely taken back with shock, even taking a couple more steps falteringly backwards, his brow arched high as he stared at me in disbelief. What are you doing here? He stammered, obviously fearfully bewildered. That, sir, is mine own business, and nothing more, I replied calmly. I was not about to fight him again. Good grief, and for what reason? To ruin the only perfect thing I had in my life? My dress was so gorgeous it more than made up for the flaws I held personally into the physical being. Might I say how absolutely incredulous you look, lady, he stated, still bewildered. I would also perchance like the opportunity to apologize for our last meeting, lady. Apology accepted. Now, if you'll kindly excuse me, good sir, I must, albeit unfortunately, return on to my own area of work, I said coolly. But before I could turn around once more, he had me tightly by the elbow with the words, perchance you could, or rather, might I, he stammered, failing over his sentences pathetically, until that was Angelus was suddenly there and interrupted him with the words, Alas, good Sir Abernathy, the lady is perchance with I this evening, and has promised me the first dance of her eve here. He smiled gallantly at me, his piercing lilac silvery orbs challenging Abernathy, who relented straightway by releasing his grip to my elbow, just as Angelus offered me a black-gloved hand. Wow, he was more handsome than I'd recalled upon the last time I'd set eyes upon him. His deep auburn black hair was swept neatly back into a small braid at the back. His skin was that pale, glowing olive Mediterranean tan that was just divine in its own smooth context. Entranced as much as I was enchanted, despite my inner self screaming to know how the hell he got into the compound. I took his hand without a second thought, and he gracefully led me onto the centre of the dance floor. The music had temporarily stopped, and now something unorthodox happened. Angela smiled at me softly, warmly, and there was that sinking of butterflies in the pit of my stomach, that fascination of intrigue which swathed a sweetly strange sensation over my form, cloaking me in a dark cloud where nothing shone but the light in his pale bright orbs, lost and swaying slightly on my feet as we danced around the hall, feeling as light as a feather, as if coated in proverbial pixie dust, and floating. He pulled me even closer to him. I could feel his warm breath, his soft grip to my hand, his soft, light, delicate, graceful movements, gliding me across the floor with such careless ease that I became even more lost. His other hand in the small of my back, guiding my waist with the tenderness of his kind touch. How could this person possibly be classified as a hunter, which in turn was seen as something so monstrous? As we danced and spun with a myriad of others in the hall, I found my head tilting as I continued to gaze up into his eyes, so pale, yet so full of life, and the offer that I had never found to be fulfilled anywhere else ever before. My breathing had become shallow and caught in breathless stops with my esophagus, as his head bowed and moved even closer to my own. I was barely aware of the world that surrounded us. The music fell into silence. The world slowed down as again, just as it had during that brief moment at the well, our lips ready to taste of the other's. A kiss. A single kiss, my heart stilled in reverence to a moment long awaited. This was someone who accepted me without question, wanted me just the way I was, with all that I could be and all that I was not. His lips had barely time to even grace mine. He did not even make it. For as quick as a flash, a blinding, searing light was shot across the room, and Diath let out a yell of anger. Then all hell erupted. With the force of the ball of light, for obviously that is what had just transpired, I was shot clear out of his arms, across the grand hall, and into a gathering of noble folk by a table that served drinks, slamming hard into the knights, miraculously managing to keep my footing. I opened my mouth in protest, but Angelus had drawn both his swords this time, as if from nowhere, and was now engaged in a skirmish with at least 12 other people, a swirl of black livid flame against the pale swirling colours of those who fought against him. Leofador was not at his dais. He was in the midst of the fight, his own sword pulled free from the scabbard, and his free hand glowing with a pulsating energy, ready to strike the defendant yet again. I let out a cry of no, but it was drowned out by the inhumane guttural cry that escaped Angelus Diath, who suddenly vanished in a cloud of smoky brown haze which choked several as he went. I ran now to see where he'd gone, not fully comprehending what had exactly just gone down. Where had he disappeared to? How had he escaped? Before I knew it, the healer was by my side and dragging me backwards, yelling something. I did not fully comprehend at first. I was sobbing for no reason that I could fathom. Then the Lord of the Dornian marched up to me. His countenance fell in grim anger and severity. He sheathed his sword and looked so angry at that moment I cowered, clinging to Robert's arm as if that could be protection enough. Leofador glared at the man in greens first before he returned his awful, burning, transfixed watch upon my frightened features. His hand raced so quick I only recall the stinging blow my face received. Such hatred of force was in that singular slap that the tears spilled readily down my cheeks, and I remember Robert shouting something in frustrated anger back at the mage. But nothing more, as he pulled me out of the hall, stating something about, "It'll be okay, lass. Let's go where you will at least be safe and wanted. Damn that little wretch, the 5 icy fires of a friend and back, bloody flaming bows. What an absolute bastard to do that to you. And in front of all those people gathered in there, I refuse to stay under this house another moment. Come on, Kate, stop your crying now, lassie. It'll be okay. I have the perfect remedy for that little shithead's arrogance." He muttered several other things under his breath, too, whilst we marched the corridor towards his small room and hideaway. I stood resolutely where Robert left me by the doorway, tears still streaming in cascades of silence down my cheeks, as he packed hurriedly and in anger, thumping things into his knapsack as he went, and occasionally muttering incoherently in his fury to the heavens as though they held the answers to all the problems that we were now encountering. I made no move to leave, so devastated by the night's events. I waited my instructions obediently and patiently. Finally, the man in green had packed all he was able to and grabbed me roughly by the arm as he hoisted his knapsack onto his shoulder. Then announced coldly, "Let's go. I'm sure Nathan can help us out with this. Better than that poor excuse of a so-called adult male of the elven kindred. What a git!" Dragged along at a hurried pace, I struggled to keep up with his long, infuriated strides. I began to cry fearfully all the more. And that is the end of chapter 2. Next time you'll get chapter 3, which is called Engagements. Thank you for listening. This is Kat Anders.